Back home, the winds of change were sweeping over New England. It was time for new faces and new voices.
This station called me up and offered me a job back in 1965 when there were very few women doing television news. I was anchoring a show when I was hired to anchor the noon news here. And then with Gail Harris became the first two women co-anchors of the newscast.
These were turbulent years. The whole country seemed to be turning upside down. Boston became the center of national protest against the Vietnam War, while the African-American community fought for its civil rights.
I think that what happened as the riots happened around the country, news management teams looked up and discovered that they needed people who looked like the people out in the street to send out to try to get the story.
Sarah Ann Shaw and Walt Sanders joined the WBZ news team in 1968, along with a young man fresh out of the Army named Charlie Austin.
I started BZ in 1968, April 4th, 1968, the day Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated. It was really difficult to get through the day personally and get to work and look at all the interviews and listen to all the tributes that were being made to Dr. King and realize that this was the beginning of a turning point for Americans, black Americans and white Americans, because we had to find a different way to resolve our differences.
As the 60s turned into the 70s, we watched the rise of a new generation and the fall of a president. The war finally was over, but court-ordered desegregation threatened to tear Boston apart.
The level of hatred, the intensity, the number of fights was really, really distressing, particularly in Boston. I think that people were surprised that it was happening in Boston. I think that people thought Atlanta and Mississippi, but I don't think that people expected to see the level of resistance which developed in Boston.
By now, the 10-minute newscast was history. WBZ-TV introduced the first half-hour noon newscast and the first early evening newscast. We also introduced New England's first specialized reporters. Cultural reporter Sonia Hamlin and consumer reporter Sharon King. Things were changing at the anchor desk, too. There was Tom Ellis. Then Tom Ellis and Tony Peppers. Then, in 1975, a guy from Pocatello, Idaho, came into the picture. A little nervous, but determined to win the hearts of New England. I was not the only promising new television journalist to join the staff in the mid-70s. A young lawyer who wanted to be a reporter came aboard in 76.
It was a great place to come to work. I mean, of course, no one today would start at WBZ television. It just wouldn't happen. I broke in at the dawn of the videotape age. I did some of the first live shots of the television station. It was amazing. You could stand at the State House and report live instantaneously with this truck.
Using the latest satellite technology, we covered major news events live as they happened, from the first visit of the tall ships to the first visit of the Pope. It was history in the making.
For me, as a kid who went to St. Anne's School in Reedville and was taught by the nuns in the 50s and 60s, if I had ever told the nuns back in 1961 or 1959 that someday I would broadcast a mass that the Pope would celebrate on the Boston Common, they never would have believed it.
The 1980s, a new decade, a new president. New faces joined the WBZ-TV news team. There was a young reporter from Texas.
The esteemed news director here in 1980 flew me up, and I took one look at the town. It was a beautiful, I remember it was a beautiful June day, one of those New England days in the summer. It's just like 75 degrees and clear and just beautiful. I fell in love with it.
Even though I was born up here, I was raised in Texas. This is cold. I'm not used to this stuff.
1980 also was the year when a lady from Little Rock, Arkansas came to town to make television history as the first black female anchor in New England.
When I first came to Boston, almost everything was a new experience. I never expected to be one of the first Western journalists to go to China. China is a very isolated country. They see Africans, but not American blacks. They certainly don't see 6 feet 1 inch tall black Americans with camera crews. So everywhere we went, we attracted crowds. In the 80s, WBZ-TV reporters traveled far and wide to cover a series of world crises from Afghanistan to Africa.
We all sat back and we watched those first BBC reports about what was happening in Ethiopia and sat here and said, wow, what's going on? What can we do? How can we report this differently or get a grasp on what's going on? Is the food, is the aid getting to the people who need it? That was my first experience outside of the United States on a news assignment. The best thing we did as a station, we went on a campaign to help people who wanted to make a difference get that food and medical supplies on the plane, and then we actually saw it come into Ethiopia. There's no limit to the good a person can do, so long as they don't care who gets the credit. We're not out there as journalists for the credit. We're just, trying to be a vehicle to get the information out. But when you know it helps somebody along the way, that's what feels great.
Helping somebody along the way is a WBZ TV tradition. In 1981, Jack Williams began Wednesday's Child, a new kind of news feature designed to bring special kids in the New England area together with loving families. More than 300 kids have found homes through Jack and Wednesday's Child, now in its 12th year. We've come a long way in 45 years, and our community's need for news has grown increasingly more complex. To cover it all, we're expanding our news. So stay tuned. More news to come from New England's original television station.
This is a brand new, shiny, two-toned 1957 automobile. During the next half hour, a driver will crash this car as a demonstration of safety techniques developed by science.